Hello and welcome to our Microsoft 365 user group live session. Today we are going to be starting our Copilot series, part one. We're going to be talking through, and in this example, we're excited that we have Jake Armstrong joining us. We'll do some introductions here in a minute, but our Copilot series is going to be talking through the different phases of recommendations, not only from Microsoft, but what we've also experienced working with different clients, including ourselves, as far as how to think through rolling out Copilot. And so, and by the way, just to be completely transparent, we are all figuring this out. Like, we've been collaborating with Microsoft, we've worked with clients, like we're all trying to figure this out together. And so I think it's okay if you don't feel confident. I think even we're one of the reasons why we're doing this is because we want to share what we've been learning as we go. And that's why I'm super thankful that Jake's joining us to give us some insight as far as what they're doing in this kind of first step of thinking through Copilot. So thanks for joining us, or for watching if you're watching the recorded version of this. With that said, Nina, let's take it away to the agenda, and then after that, we'll do some brief introductions and get into the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Agenda-wise, one of the things that I wanted to look at today is just a really quick overview of Microsoft's recommended steps when doing a Copilot deployment. I think that'll kind of set the stage for what we're discussing today. Then we'd just love to introduce Jake just after that. And some of the things that we want to touch on is really starting the Copilot journey. So thinking about things like governance and security, an AI council, how to make the decisions around those seat assignments. That one's, a question that everybody's kind of struggling with. And what does training and adoption look like? All right, so really, I just wanted to do a very high-level overview of those 4 phases that are recommended by Microsoft. The one that we're going to be focusing on today really is phase 1, which is the getting ready phase. And as I've alluded to in the previous slide, just thinking about data governance and security, it's a really key piece we need to be considering as we're thinking about deploying Copilot. How to figure out what those seat assignments are, how to identify those champions and those early adopters, and what does that training look like, and how do we create a space for them to collaborate and share what they're learning, and then thinking through what an AI council would potentially look like. Some of the other steps there would be, actually deploying, onboarding, and engaging. Further down the line, looking at how are we actually delivering that impact? How do we measure it? Sort of what reports can we be looking at to see if it's actually effective? And then way further down the line, there's ways to actually extend and optimize. In other words, customizing Copilot to do some very specific things in your 365 environment. So with that said, Nate, I'm going to hand it back to you. Hopefully this gives a little bit of background to today's session.
Yeah, thanks, Nina, for that overview. Again, we're going to be focusing on phase 1, and there's plenty to talk about. I'll hand it over here to Jake to make some brief introductions, but I think at a high level message that we've been hearing and the discussion we've been having, as far as like, if you're in this pre-getting ready phase, right? Like, well, I'm not even ready to know if I'm ready to get ready, right? Forgive me for using ready a lot in that sense, but we are just seeing that the pace at which AI is moving, and we're focused on Copilot, but we also acknowledge that Copilot isn't the only AI tool that's available. And even in preparation for this conversation, Jake made a comment that the first reaction was like, "Hey, everyone's gonna like have it," but then I actually we don't believe that every person in every organization across every role is going to need a Copilot license. There are specific roles that I think are going to benefit from it, and that's part of the discussion today, is really figuring out how do you start thinking about who that might benefit. So hopefully some of these ideas and discussion points today will help you apply it to your own world and think about, like, well, what kind of roles are similar in your organization, as far as how to maybe get started, or thinking about getting started. And with that said, that's my hope, by the way. Our hope is, by sharing this, that even if it's just one person in your organization, we strongly believe that because AI is moving so quickly, that the best thing to do is just get started somewhere, right? And so that's part of the reason why we're starting with phase 1. Even as one person, get started, get experimenting, try to figure out how it can help benefit your organization and save you some time. With that said, Jake, give us a quick introduction, and then let's help us with what conversations internally at Dunham kind of got you to the pre-getting ready phase, right? Like what conversations did you have here to that made you get into where you're at now, which is in the phase one?
Yeah, well, thanks, Nina and Nate, for having me. This is fun topic. My name is Jake. I'm leading an AI initiative at Dunham. And just to reiterate what Nate said earlier, I am by no means an AI expert. I just happen to be the champion of this initiative. And so, yes, we are all learning as we go here. What got this started for us is I work for an engineering company, and so we adopted Microsoft 365, fully a few years ago. We've always used apps, obviously, but kind of went all in a few years ago, and now with AI being a topic that everyone is bringing up, there's sort of two sides of this that we were focused on, and which led it to be an initiative, something that we decided we needed an official, formal, plan of attack, I guess, on it, which is number one, just Copilot in general. Is this something that could be helpful to us? Recapping meetings and things like that is a big part of what we do. And then there's a second piece of it, which is how does this disrupt our industry? How does AI in general, change the way we do our jobs? And so that was kind of what led this to be we need an initiative. Copilot is a major part of this initiative, but again, it's an AI initiative.
Did you, when you speaking of the industry, how it's going to disrupt your industry, was there conversation about how you felt Dunham would function or compare to your competition? Like, was that part of that conversation? How'd that go?
Yeah, absolutely. We had actually a partner in our firm was at a conference, and he watched a video on a beta testing product that kind of did our job for a lot of people in our company. And it's not something that's out yet or that you can purchase, but it was just kind of something in his head that went, oh my gosh, this is something we need to think about. And then I had a conversation with him about it, and I showed him Copilot and some of the videos that I've seen and some of the things. And it was, yeah, if this is going to change our industry, there's part of our company that needs to be focused on the tools and technology. And if this is something that can help us do our job better, be more efficient, be more accurate, then this is something that we definitely need to look at, because you don't want to, I don't know that it's going to separate us from our competition, but it could be something that you don't want to be learning this in 2 years from now when everyone else already has it adopted and worked through the kinks. And like, just to kind of reiterate again, what you said is just get started. Let's just get this going and let's just see what it does. And then we can deploy more licenses as needed or roll back as needed, or, we'll decide where to go once we get started. But to sit here and think that once we have a plan in place, then we'll get started, it didn't seem right for us. It seemed like we need to go. Everyone's talking about it. People are using it. Let's get started.
So I got two things, Jake. One is a comment just from, I remember way back in the day, like a year and a half ago, when AI first, Gen AI first kind of got released, ChatGPT, that I remember, so this would have been 2023, every conference I went to, it was like, I actually was getting sick of hearing about it. Candidly, I'm kind of already still sick of hearing about it, but that's, I think, a problem, because it felt like so much hype. It just felt like this is just that, like is this really that big of a deal? I remember thinking, like, everyone's just talking, it's just the buzz, it's the cloud of 15 years ago, right? But as things have evolved in the last 6 or 8 months, and we're starting to see some application of the just Gen AI or Chat GPT, more than just like searching that people have been using online, it's really powerful. And like the comment that you made, like, you don't want to wait 2 years and be thinking about figuring it out then. It's like people are going to start advancing. And so it's just interesting, because the reason why I said that is less about having some dialogue here, but more about, I imagine there's a lot of people, business owners and operators and folks that are trying to, they're feeling like this is just buzz, right? Versus, because I know that's how I was feeling last year, and now starting to see it apply. My mind has definitely shifted to, okay, holy crap, we can't get behind. We got to get moving. So, and that sounds like where you're at. So, in that light, here's my question. So, when you look at the ability of Copilot or AI, because like I said, this is an AI initiative, and Copilot's not the only tool that might be used, but how do you see leveraging the time savings? Have you had conversations internally about, like, hey, if this saves us time, what are we going to do with that?
Well, that's exactly the conversation that was had regarding licenses. At what point, if it saves you the $30 a month in time, it may not even necessarily be worth it. Why would you adopt this and train on this if it's going to just simply pay for itself? It's the conversations we had was like, this needs to be a no-brainer. This needs to be something that is absolutely saving us time. And so as we are rolling out, we're in a test phase right now. But one of the things that we are talking about is 3 years from now, I'm going to look back on this report I wrote up that I pitched to our board of directors that says we need to do this, and I'm going to laugh at what I thought Copilot was going to be or what AI was going to do for us.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are some things right now that are absolute game-changing time savers, and I think the one that I always hear, I've watched a million videos, I've sat in on meetings with you guys, and the one that always comes up that blows everyone's mind is meeting recaps. Um, and unfortunately, a huge part of what we do as a company is sit in meetings. And meeting minutes are literally a deliverable that's in our scope of
Mm-hmm.
services. When we do a project, we are responsible for meeting minutes. Well, in my mind, if I'm a project manager at Dunham, this is absolutely day one. You get a license, and I'm going to specifically sit down with that group of people and go, here is how you use Copilot to help you prepare for meetings, recap meetings, take notes, review the tasks that were assigned to the people in the meeting. And here's, if you care enough, here's how you can assign that to your planner or to-do list or whatever. I'll show you other things too. But to me, it's like you take that, I hate this phrase, but low-hanging fruit, the things that we know that are out there, like this can summarize a PDF for you, this can recap a meeting, and you absolutely hit everyone over the head with that. Because day one, I need you to appreciate what this does day one, because then once you get those little wins, once I go, hey, this saves me a half hour a day or 40 minutes a day, I'm a little
Per
bit
day.
more likely, yeah,
Per
per
day.
day.
Per day. Yeah.
Right. And so if you are in a meeting every day and you're getting this little, you know, uptick in your free time because of Copilot, I think you're going to be more likely to click on the little Copilot button when you're in Excel. And maybe I'm going to, instead of just Googling for this thing that I'm going to look for, I'm going to try this little icon here that Jake's been telling me to use Bing, for the last 2 months, and I won't do it. And so in my mind, what I'm trying to think about it as far as adoption goes, I need to show you the wins day one, because there are things that I don't know how awesome this is going to be in 2 years. And there's other things that are going to go, oh my God, this is great for this also. But as far as adoption goes, it's day one. I need to show you where the wins are today.
And sorry, just quickly, Jake, I think we were doing some quick mental calculations the other day as we were thinking about the cost factor, which, on the face of it, people are like, whoa, that feels like a lot. And then I think we calculated that within the first meeting, that license would have paid for itself. Just a really quick calculation there the other day.
Yeah. Well, so our staff, not me, luckily, I'm just in marketing, but the designers and engineers, which make up 90% of our workforce at Dunham, um, you know, bill out at hundreds of dollars an hour. And so
Right.
if after your meeting, you don't have to bill a client for an hour to recap the meeting, you can bill them for 15 minutes to recap the meeting. Number one, that helps our client. We are a client services firm. I mean, you guys understand that. I mean, our
Mm-hmm.
job is to make our client happy and to do the best we can for them. And sometimes that means doing a great job. And sometimes that means billing them less. I mean, and when you bill them less, you can either spend more time going over QA, QC and making sure, we're being better with what we're doing, or you can move on to another project. And so, both from the standpoint of serving our clients and empowering ourselves to do our jobs further and better, I think it's a win-win. And yeah, like at $30, you don't need to save one of our senior engineers more than 10, 15 minutes in order for this to pay for itself.
So that speaks to so that in the last part there really kind of got to the theme that we've been hearing from people around actually the positive side versus the fear of it of what AI can do. Like the fear of what AI can do is like, oh well, it saves me, a half hour a day, and so now I can lay off a bunch of people. Like, right? I don't need a bunch of people, right? Because the efficiency that's created, it's like, okay, that's the choice. I mean, that some people might make that choice, but what we're hearing from more people is what you Nina, you and Jake were both just talking about, which is you can spend more time doing the things that are the higher and better use of your time, right? Like an engineer, if I want to pay them to bill me for services, I'd rather pay them less to do meeting minute scribing and more to do the high-end engineering mindset, mentally challenging stuff that I really want them to do, right? So, and being able to do more of that is really, what we've seen is at least trying to think through that, right? And that piece. So that segues to, and I'm going to set it up with something, but I want to segue, Jake, to how you identify the initial group of people to do licenses, and I want to tee it up with this concept for those that are listening to think about. Is that Nina and I went to a Microsoft conference, and they shared some data that there's about 15% of your organization that statistically that are curious, that like to create efficiency. They don't mind taking the extra time to figure out and maybe see, hey, I see a solution over here. I understand the business problem over here, and I can connect the dots as far as how I can use tool A to solve problem B or whatever. And then there's like, and Jake, this is where I wanted to go there, is because then there's the 70% of the organization that's just like, just show me how you want me to do it and I'll do it that way. And then you have some laggards that are typically the 15% of the organization that is going to kick and scream, and they don't like change and they don't want to do it. But two lessons. One, don't let that lagging 15% manipulate or control the 85%, right? Because you're going to not benefit the rest of the majority of the organization because you have some loud detractors. But the other thing you said that I think is really critical relative to the question I asked you, Jake, is you mentioned day one, I want to give them these 3 tasks or these 3 ways that I want you to use Copilot. Like, I feel like that it's like if I do a Stephen Covey start with the end in mind, like the start with the end in mind of phase 1 is trying to figure out, or at least get the group of people that'll figure out that. What are the roles that can benefit, and what are the few things that I can give them to start with day one that they can start saving time so that they're not figuring it out and twiddling their thumbs. So how did you pick the initial group of users?
So we went through and actually got some good feedback from Nina on this, because my mindset was just focus on that top 15%. And my mind went right to young people who understand technology. And, I'm in my 40s. And so I need someone who's, grew up with social media and the internet and stuff. They're going to be more savvy about this. But in reality, what we found was it was the people who were most interested. And one of the benefits that Dunham had when we started this was this came out of our strategic planning. We've got a strategic planning committee, and we started an initiative. And so what we do is we pick a topic and we think this is a problem we need to solve. And so before we even had to come up with this group of test users, we had a volunteer group of about 15 people who had already raised their hand and said, I will give up 10 lunch hours, and I will sit in on this initiative, and I will raise my hand and speak in this meeting, and I will test things out and do research. And so we kind of already had a small group of people who we already knew were interested. And so what we did was about half of that 15, maybe not quite half, but we took a few people right from that initiative. We are already interested. We are already on board. So some of us in this room are getting licenses. And so that was, maybe 6 of them. And then we did was we went and took a list of the people around the office, and we tried to break it up as much as possible and try to get people from all the different groups, I would say, at Dunham, because it's not necessarily our business units or our disciplines. It was, we have mechanical and electrical engineers, but boy, we need an engineer, and maybe we need an engineer who works remotely. Maybe he might have a little bit of a different insight or a different use case for it. And then we probably want someone who's young, who's not leading meetings, and how could it help them do their job? And then I also do want some senior level people who are leading meetings to do it. And so we have people in other offices. And so let's try to identify people in other offices who work regularly with people in this office. And so that, and try to get some input from them as well. And then also on top of that was, now we have a whole other side of the company, which is sort of the admin, marketing, accounting, IT, the non-engineers. And we need to get a few people from that group as well. And so when it comes to establishing that group of test users, it was mostly get someone from each bucket that we think training needs to be done. And I need to train accounting specifically on how they can use it, and marketing specifically, and a senior level project manager type. I need to show that person how they can use it. And then a designer who's, kind of more of the day-to-day work, constantly at their desk drafting and designing. I need to show them how this can help them. And so a lot of the thought that went into developing that test user group was training. We've already been talking about training in this initiative. And the thing that I keep saying is we need to meet people where they are at. If I
Mhm.
am in marketing, I need someone to show me how this can help me in marketing. Just a generic Microsoft created video on how to use Copilot doesn't, it's not using the words that I use. So I want to tell my marketing person, you just got an RFP in your inbox and you need to develop a proposal. Here's how Copilot can help that specific role. And then I want to tell a senior project manager, like, you just started a project and you've got a bunch of meetings scheduled, and here's how you specifically can use it to help you do your job. And so in a strange way, the what training are we going to develop and who are the test users, that kind of conversation kind of went hand in hand, because it was like,
Yeah.
this needs to be the same thing.
Yeah. Did you one thing you had mentioned earlier, and I want to make sure we hit on it. It was before, you mentioned it before we went live. Was how did you you did something before the license? You identified the group of people, but then before the license actually got assigned, what was one of the things you did internally?
Yeah, so we actually went right to Microsoft's, I think it's Microsoft Learn or something like that,
Yeah.
and they've got a great little series called Getting Started with Copilot for Microsoft 365. It's a little over an hour to do. It's a mixture of videos and some reading, but basically it's going to take about an hour, but it'll give you a really good start on what is Copilot. It's not just what is AI, and it's more what specifically is Copilot for Microsoft 365. That little icon
Mhm.
that's going to appear in your Word application and in Outlook, what does that specifically mean for you? And so we required everyone in that test user group, there's 15 of them. We sent that email out just a couple of days ago. We've already got about half the people who have responded. I've completed the training, and now we assign you a license. And so you won't even get it until you've sat through that hour and a half
Done
long
the
training
basics.
session. So yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was great. I hadn't heard that yet, but I'm like, that is I mean, and Microsoft, that's one thing that I think Microsoft has done a good job. They put out a lot of content, a lot of resources. The trick is you got to apply it to your world, right?
Right.
So they put out a lot of stuff, and it does help you get some ideas, but you still got to figure out how to apply it. So was your objective, and maybe you haven't figured this out yet, but you mentioned the role specific functions that can help people save time in their role. Have you identified a criteria or a litmus to say before you, like how much time saving is needed for you to eventually assign a license to someone outside of the test group? You know what I mean? Like, what if my role only can save, I don't know, I'm just trying to pick a time, like maybe it only is a break-even investment for person role A or role Z or whatever you want to call it. Have you figured out that threshold or that criteria that you're trying to assess as you're going down this process?
Somewhat. Again, it's easier for people who are billing out to clients. For people on
Sure.
the admin
Yeah.
side, it's another thing. Um, we've also identified, for example, our IT department. If they're going to be answering questions, they have to have it. So even if they don't ever use it, they have to have it, because they need to
Yep.
be able to try to duplicate a problem somebody's having or to
Mm,
troubleshoot. And so, um, I think for us, I don't think we're going to have to do too much thinking about that. Number one, once we deploy it, we've looked at these reports that Copilot will give you about how much people are using it, whether or not somebody's got a license and they've never actually clicked the button, or they've
mm,
never actually entered a prompt. We can, reassign that license or just take that license away. But I think with our senior level people, I think there's an obvious group of people who are going to get it day one, because they, their time is so valuable that it's really not necessarily are they going to use it. It's more of, it's up to me to make sure they use it, to go, this
yep.
will save you
Yep.
time and save you money, and it will pay for itself. And
Yep.
so we haven't really identified a number per se, but I think we already have in our heads what specific roles are without a doubt
Yep.
getting it. And then after that, we want to have some way for people to go, I know I'm not in the group that is in the obvious, I should get it, but I just want you to know I'd really like this, and here's how I would use it, sort of a thing. And
Yeah.
so there's a little bit of, if it can save you time and money, we want you using it. And if it's something you're interested in, I want you to have it, even if you're not
Yeah.
in that group, because you might come up with something. And we're going to rely on the people who are using this. We're relying on this test user group to come up with that list of training that needs to be developed. And so the feedback we get from them is going to determine the training that we create, and it will probably help us determine to a better degree who does and does not need Copilot for 365.
All right, so I had a follow-up question thought of, but then you just said something that makes me want to go switch gears a little bit, or like continue your line of thinking instead of changing gears. So as you said, you're relying on these people to come up with these ideas. Like, have you identified a place to share and collaborate with the 15 users and/or extend that to other folks in the future? Have you figured that out? How are you doing that?
Yeah, we're actually using we had a train the trainers team set up in Microsoft when we rolled out 365, and it was a place for anyone who is doing research and getting training themselves before the full rollout to go and to meet and share ideas and post documents. And here's a cool link to a video I saw, and oh, check out this cool prompt that I just did that was awesome. Um, and so we've got a place for everyone who is in that user group to meet and to share documents and to collaborate. And we've also have identified that this Copilot test user group will go exactly 8 weeks.
Mm.
And every Friday of those 8 weeks, we will meet for a half hour Friday morning. I'm going to lead the meeting, but hopefully I don't need to lead the meeting. Hopefully it's just an idea exchange. And
Yeah.
so I will start each meeting with a small agenda just in case people are sitting there going, I haven't actually used it yet. Sorry, and maybe the first week that's
So
what
peer
it'll be.
pressure. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
well, and so my plan for that first meeting is to have a bunch of very specific examples ready, and that is a week from today. So our first meeting will be next Friday, and I've already got sort of a small presentation set up that's just going to give you some ideas and some cool things that I've already done that you might want to try. And
Yep.
so hopefully by then some people will have already used it and they'll already have some insight. But I'm probably one of the more excited Copilot users out there, but I actually do my role in the company. There's 3 people who do what I do. So my cool tips and tricks might not necessarily apply to
Right.
99% of the company. And so
Yeah.
I'm really relying on the people who go, I'm a designer and I'm in meetings with architects and talking to contractors about how this building should work. And here's some cool things that I'm doing with Copilot, because that's really where I'm really relying on those people. And I think my job is, again, to be the champion. I know I'm the champion of this initiative, but that actually means something. My job is to pull things out of you. I need you to get excited about this and you
Yeah.
to find awesome things that Copilot can do. And so that's kind of the point of that weekly meeting, is for me to get as much out of these core users as I can, so that once that 8 weeks is up, we can just hit the ground running. Here's training at every level, and here's what we think it will be. And I think we'll have a base set of training ready to go, documents and videos,
Hmm.
and probably company-wide meetings as well. But we envision that this will kind of go on forever. And so, kind of going back to what
Yep.
you said about a place to share ideas, this train the trainers group. So you're going to be the Copilot trainers who are scattered throughout our offices and um, throughout the country. We want you to be the people that the people you work with can go to for quick questions.
Yes, I love that.
Um, I'm going to have myself and another senior engineer as the kind of core help desk, I guess, for Copilot. We also have developed an AI at Dunham email address that if you just have a
Mm.
general question, you can go to. Um, and then I've actually just built out an artificial intelligence page on our intranet, and that will be where we host videos, and you could submit requests for tools or something that you want to purchase regarding AI. And there will be a bunch of Copilot documents and tips, and even a prompt library for different types of work that people do. So I can go to that page and show me prompt ideas that designers are using, and there will be a small database there for them to use. So
Yeah, Jake, you actually hit on something that we've been running into as well, because one of the things you mentioned is like everybody's going to be using this a little differently. Designers are going to have, a different viewpoint from somebody in finance, for example. And trying to remember every single prompt out there is just about impossible. And so it's a really important thing that you mentioned there, is like that prompt library, and then also kind of grouping it by a specific, I don't know, role, business function. How are
yeah.
you thinking
Or
about setting up
application.
application? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, how are you thinking about setting that up so that if, it's a really quick resource to say, hey, I'm a designer, there's a specific bucket of prompts that I'm super interested in. How are you setting that up? I'm kind of curious.
I want it to be I've thought a little bit about this. So I think from day one, I don't know how big that library is going to be. So it might even literally be a page on our intranet. But I would like there to be, and I don't know if Microsoft Lists is a good place where I can sort and filter
Maybe.
by discipline and
Hmm.
prompt type kind of a thing, or I can even filter by Word or PowerPoint or Outlook, um, but I'm thinking lists at first, but again, this could get to the point where that library gets very big. And so
Hmm.
I don't know. We'll have to address that as we
Yeah.
roll this out. But I think right away it's probably going to be a list.
Mm. Yeah, that's kind of where we landed for now as
Hmm.
well, exactly to what you're saying. Like, let's kind of, do it with different categories and you can kind of filter for those things. But yeah, we're also wondering, like, where does that land eventually when the library gets so big that it's almost like cumbersome to search through it. So yeah, no, I'm
Right.
just curious because we're grappling with exactly the same things as well.
Yeah. Well, and this, I was just thinking, Jake, that I got to shout it out. Like for those of you listening live or watching the recording, like this is why we enjoy working with Jake. Like he's just very forward thinking, and like and your organization too. I mean, as engineers, right? Your core engineers, like you all have that like think through the mindset, right? Think through the steps, and so I love that you're very intentional about the things you're doing, and so I really have at least one last question because we're over time already, and it's flown by. But I think it's important to touch on this AI council concept. I'm not sure where you're at on that, but so now you've talked about identifying people, getting licensed, doing some training, sharing and collaborating. But what are the governing like rules? Have you thought through that as far as like, do you only use certain AI tools? Do you like and I'll give you one example that Nina shared with me before, which is like, and you even said it as an example, like, here's an RFP. Well, Copilot can help me with the RFP, but Copilot's not going to do the whole RFP, right? So like, you
Right.
can't just like, all right, Copilot, look at the RFP, send, right? So there's got to be some kind of guidance around this. So have you thought about that, or have you put
Yes.
anything together? What are you doing there?
Yes, we have. I'm actually recording later today a video that will go out to the whole company that announces and provides a link for the new AI policy that we've written. And I actually got the idea from you, Nate, to have AI write the AI policy. And and it was interesting because once that happened, we thought that was actually the first phase of this initiative. It was develop an AI policy, and then after that, it was provide training for the staff, and then develop a think tank, an ongoing group of people who will meet
Yep.
at least quarterly and talk about. They'll review the list of requests that are coming in through the AI site and the AI email address, and they will review our prompt library and things like that, and figure out from there where more training needs to be. But going back to that AI policy, we wrote the AI policy. I presented it to the group, and we were like, this is the first phase of this initiative. This is going to take 4 to 5 days, and we'll have a policy. Then we can move on to training. Well, that ended up being a month of meetings about this
Interesting.
policy because we wanted it to be very specific. And I think some of the feedback that we got right away was, yeah, this kind of just talks about AI in general. But I personally wanted it to be, one of the things that we went back and forth on was, unleash all the AI tools and let people go, and let's see where we end up to believe them or don't believe them. But I went through to a Microsoft conference, and I was kind of came away pretty impressed with what they talked about security and responsible AI,
Hmm.
and how our prompts do lived within our Microsoft tenant, and so we were concerned about I'm uploading a document with sensitive client data, and now OpenAI is using that for future AI, and maybe that's overblown, but like, that was we're responsible for other people's confidential information.
Hmm.
And so
That's right.
for us, it's like we don't have a choice to go, oh, it's probably fine. If it's might not be fine, it's a no-go. And so we identified in our AI policy that we are a Microsoft company and you will use Microsoft Copilot for AI. And at least until we have a list of approved tools, which is what we're calling it on our site. And right now it says Copilot for 365. And that'll eventually even include little plugins for the CAD and drafting that we do. Oh, I've
Sure.
got this AI
Yeah.
tool that will help me lay out a floor plan. Well, here's the one that we buy licenses for, and here's who you talk to if you want a license. And so, yes, we've identified that you will use Microsoft Copilot. We are not allowing ChatGPT, Google Gemini, anything like that. You can use them at your own risk with your own email address, but we've even said that you cannot create an account with our email address.
Mm.
That is something that cannot live within our within our environment, within our work environment. Anything work related, you will use Copilot. And we've even specifically kind of what you mentioned about, hey, respond to this RFP for me. I even thought it was funny. Nobody else thought it was funny, but I put a I put a specific line in our AI policy that it says, no output from any AI will be used as a final work product, and
Right.
everything that comes out of AI will be reviewed by at least one human. It's
Yep.
literally what we
Yep.
put in there. Like, you
Hmm.
cannot trust anything. I don't care if it's a draft of an email. You better change one thing in there. You better have read it to the
Yeah.
point where nothing that comes out of there should be
Yep.
perfect, and everyone needs to review it. So that's kind of how we're doing that.
I didn't know the answer to that question, but knowing you and your organization, I kind of figured you thought through that. So I appreciate that. So no, that's a great example of thinking through. Go ahead, Nina, and
Yeah,
then we
sorry,
can
I know
probably wrap up
we
here in a
are a bit
second.
over time, but just
Yep.
to kind of tie in with what you were saying about the security, I think just an honorable mention about all the work you've been doing on the governance side of things,
Mm,
just to kind of tighten things up, make sure that you're doing like regular access reviews, making sure the right people have access to the right information. And I know like you and your organization have done a ton of work around that. And it is an ongoing thing, as we know, governance is never over. Like, things change in your 365 environment. But just wanted to mention that that is definitely something to be thinking about as you're rolling out Copilot, just because Copilot will respect those permissions and that access. And yeah, so just wanted to mention that because it's a lot of work that's been going on behind the scenes with that too.
yeah, and Nina, and I'm curious, Jake, just in response to that, but that's an illustration. I appreciate you bringing that up because, like, so as I mentioned in the very beginning, we're all kind of going through this together, including some MyTech. We've identified that's a subgroup of users, just like Dunham, like Jake was talking about, and we have been going through our own internal governance of reviews and going through our SharePoint sites and our team sites and making sure just all that. And we've made the intentional decision that we want to work on some of that before we then extend to beyond that subset of group. Like that's one of the decisions that we've spent. So we just decided to take a little extra time to work on that. Not that anything's bad or broken or exposed. It's just like we just want to kind of take the opportunity. We're trying to just like a lot of people, when you build, we built a lot of that environment pre-pandemic and before we really understood how all these pieces were working together. And all through the last several years, we've learned a lot about how things work better and how we can make things work more seamless and more intuitive for our team. And so we're just trying to go take and work in parallel on those two things before we extend Copilot. So I don't know, Jake, because you have been spending time there, how's that impacted your Dunham and your organization's desire to move forward or in parallel or intersect? I don't know.
Yeah, I think we lucked out sort of in a major way, just timing wise. We had just rolled this thing out. We are a group of engineers. I'm one of the three creatives in the company, and so it drives me nuts sometimes. But at the same time, we had a group of people sitting down going, "Thou shalt not do this. Thou shalt not do that. Do not allow anyone to create a team. No one can just make a channel. No one can do." And so it was much more when we rolled out 360 or 365. It was much more what people cannot do and lock everything down until
Yep.
we know otherwise. And so we are very fortunate is that we do not have a tenant where there's sprawl and this group created a retail team and another group created a team called retail team and another group created a group called the retail group team. And so we never had that. And so we don't really we're very lucky in the sense that because we just rolled this out, we don't have a mess on our hands. We have um, a very specific set of teams that exist, and those will be the teams that we use. And we have very strict ideas about who can see what and who can edit and who can just view. And so I think we were very lucky in the sense that giving me a Copilot license, am I going to be able to find something that I didn't know I had access to? And I'm pretty confident that the answer is no right now because of how
Yep.
strict we were when
Yep.
we rolled this out in the first place.
No, that's great. So I appreciate that. So, all right, everyone. I'm sorry for going over, but hopefully we were hit on some valuable components as you're thinking through this getting ready to get ready phase one of rolling out Copilot. So stay tuned for our next session. We'll have another session next month. We do have a Microsoft 365 Champions community on LinkedIn, which is where we do broadcast. We don't broadcast to the group, but we do post these kind of things in the group, tips and tricks and ideas in the group. And we kind of like Jake, when you said we want to bring people together, and while you're leading the meeting, you hope to not lead the meeting. Like that's kind of what we want that community to be. We want the community to lead the community and find a place to foster and contribute and all learn from each other. So I appreciate anyone connecting there. Otherwise, look, thank you so much for your time, for either joining live today or watching the recorded session. Jake, it's a pleasure to work with you. I appreciate you giving your time and sharing willingly with the community. We're all learning from each other right now, and so the more we can help each other out, I think the better off we'll all be. So until next time, part 2 will be next month. Stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, I hope you all be productive, and I hope you all stay secure.